In this week's Parsha, Parshat Mishpatim, we encounter Bnei Yisrael on the second wave of Matan Torah, receiving the Torah. Last week was the great revelation at Har Sinai, Mamad Har Sinai, where Bnei Yisrael received the SAR HS, the Ten Commandments. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his wisdom, actually educated Bnei Yisrael in waves. So after experiencing the first of the Ten Commandments, in this week's Parsha, Parshat Mishpatim, there are three prakim, Kaf, Kaf Bet, and Kaf Gimel. The first three prakim of the Parsha are dedicated to laying out a small sample of a whole range of laws of mitzvot, of halachot, starting with basic social laws and ending with some of our particular mitzvot of Am Yisrael, such as the Chagim and Kashrut, Basar B'Chalav, etc. And all of that culminates with a great and sacred Seudah, where Bnei Yisrael accept this second wave of mitzvot. This book, the Prakim 21 to 23, Kafal to Chav Gimel, are commonly known as Sefer HaBrit. It's the Book of the Covenant. And to put that into its context, essentially Bnei Yisrael last week received the Aseret HaDibrot, that first wave, and then this week, where they said Na'aseh v'nishma, they accepted upon themselves. That was a larger sample of a broader range of mitzvot encompassed in something called Sefer HaBrit, the Book of the Covenant. What I'd like to do is for us to focus on how Bnei Yisrael, how God begins educating Bnei Yisrael in this Sefer HaBrit, the Book of the Covenant, because the first parshiot, the first units that we find in this Parshat Mishpatim focuses on Eved Ivri and Ama Ivriya. It's about slavery. I remember when I was a young teacher teaching 8th grade Chumash, and I was responsible to teach Parshat Mishpatim. I actually skipped the first unit in Parshat Mishpatim because I didn't know how to teach. What was God trying to convey, and how should I, as a modern person, understand the idea that the Sefer HaBrit, the Book of the Covenant, begins focusing on slavery, and particularly after Bnei Yisrael had just left Egypt. They just left hundreds of years of slavery, and now they are Bnei Mitzvah, Ovdei Hashem, and the first thing they learn about is slavery. Well, with some help from Professor Moshe Greenberg and the former Chief Justice of the Israeli Supreme Court, Menachem Elon, came to a very deep understanding of what this Parsha is actually trying to teach. I'd like to focus on two psukim. The second pasuk of the Parsha, the first pasuk of Eved Ivri, says as follows: Ki tikna Eved Ivri, if somebody should obtain an Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave, sheish shanim ya'avod, he should work for 6 years, uvashvi'it yetzei lachafshi chinam, and the 7th year he should go free, chinam. And in that last word of the pasuk is embodied essentially a revolution in the value of the human being that the Torah was trying to teach humanity. Normally, when a person obtains a slave, if they are done with the slave, they can sell the slave, free the slave. The Torah here says, if you obtain an Eved Ivri, the Eved works for you for 6 years, and in the 7th year, the Eved will go free, chinam, free. Menachem Elon taught, and Moshe Greenberg taught similarly, that what this pasuk is saying is there is no such thing as one Jew owning another Jew. It's not possible. You may be able to sign a 6-year contract, but at the end of those 6 years, the person is yetzei lachafshi chinam. He goes free and does not have to pay any money. And the same thing is stated regarding the Ama Ivriya. After her years are up, yatsa chinam ein kasef. She goes free and there's no payment. As Menachem Elon said it, this describes the idea of slavery, taking all the guts out of slavery. There might be such thing as someone working for someone else. There is no such thing as a Jew owning another Jew. And therefore, when the years are up and the contract expires, the person goes free. We find a similar idea expressed in an odd pasuk a little bit later in the Parsha, when it teaches about the goring ox. Torah describes the laws about what the responsibility is in a circumstance where a person is killed. And then the Torah says, Oven yigach, ovat yigach, if the person if the ox gores a son or a daughter, the rules are the same. What kind of halacha is that to say if a son or a daughter gets gored, the laws are the same? Why wouldn't it be the same? So we know that in ancient civilization, children were property of parents. Code of Hammurabi said very explicitly in terms of the punishment when somebody does something to someone's children. What the Torah here is describing is children are independent people. They are not property of parents in the same way that a Jew can't be the property of another Jew. There's no such thing as ownership of people. And it is for that reason, actually, that when the Torah says in the end of Parshat Maseh, Lo tikchu kofer lanefesh rotzeach asher hu rashay lamut, that there is no such thing. The original reason for the death penalty in the context of a sin like murder was to teach there is no such thing as a monetary value on human life. The only way to compensate for taking a life is by taking the life of the murderer. Of course, as a civilization, as Jews, we no longer do that in terms of that classic capital punishment. But the overarching message that Sefer HaBrit is trying to teach at its beginning, you know what it is to be slaves. You were freed from Egypt. Now you are free and you are servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The number one lesson that we are teaching, a Jew cannot own another Jewish person. Every person has infinite value. There's no monetary value that can be placed on a person. Each person is created as Tzelem Elokim. And that is the initial first message that the Sefer HaBrit tries to teach Am Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom.